we're futurists. We love thinking about how space and the world and people and animals and everything interact and how that will happen in the future.
Hi. Hello.
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 Hello, and welcome to Architecting.
Hey, Becca.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Where were we?
We spent 10 days driving all over Norway looking at architecture.
Mm-hmm. Snøhetta architecture.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like it was a big push to get to that trip in late May. It's a little weird. This episode that we're doing right now was recorded back in the beginning of March, so 3 months ago. So it feels like a really long time ago, and I apologize to our guest how long it took to get out, but I like packed guests in before the trip, and so I have this backlog of guests that I'm going to be releasing over the summer and then take time off this summer. But
good plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so who are the guests today?
This was a really fun interview. I really enjoyed speaking to these guests. So we have Stacy Passmore and Diane Lipovsky, co-founders of Superbloom Landscape Architecture.
Ooh, landscape.
I know, yeah. I want to branch out more. I just have so many people I want to interview, and it's hard to branch out to everybody I want to. But these two, very, very interesting, diverse backgrounds, and just created this firm about a year ago, but have been killing it, hiring employees, a fully woman firm made up of all women.
Cool.
And doing a lot of great work. I connected with them at a review at CU, and I really just love how they had this great desire to connect and engage with other designers and professionals, and they're fans of the podcast, and it just had a good conversation talking through a bunch of kind of design stuff.
Design stuff, huh?
Design stuff.
I'm interested.
You heard it here. This is late night before publishing this, coming back from a vacation. Anyway, yep. So this is a good one. Check it out. Enjoy.
Looking forward to it.
Hey, we're happy to be sponsored by Modern in Denver magazine. For over a decade, they've been crafting fantastically curated content on Colorado designers and projects, spreading the gospel of good design within our region.
And I love how the goal of Modern in Denver aligns with the goal of this podcast, to better build up and connect the community of Colorado designers. So go buy a copy of the magazine at your local bookstand, subscribe to their weekly email list, and follow them on Instagram.
Check it out.
We set up like armchair expert for you here.
I like it. And it's like just a nice even wall back there. I would like to see some of your nice drawings or models or something back there, but you know.
We thought about also between two ferns having. Yeah, we were definitely considering that one.
I was trying to think if there's some like architectural play on that I could have done when I first set up the podcast, but I didn't. I do have. You see I have like these fake plants in here. They were almost.
Oh yeah.
You know those like $3 IKEA ones, those plastic ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Not much is growing in this little 2 foot by 4 foot room here. So.
Yeah, is that where you do the podcast? Is it like a closet?
This is my podcast studio and my pantry and my coat closet. So. Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of people's workspaces during COVID.
Yeah. You like squeeze space out of everywhere.
Are you able to hear us okay? We're trying out a new, we just got a speakerphone this week.
Oh.
Unrelated to this, but
yeah.
I think
it sounds pretty good. I I had this nice fancy mic here.
Whoa.
And yeah, it looks cool, right? It broke 2 weeks ago on me. And like, I feel like I just haven't had time to like fix it in a lot. And this is the third interview now I've done that I've had to use these guys.
Oh.
And like, I only think about it 10 minutes before I do an interview. And so.
Well, we did have this idea. We were like, oh, we should see if Adam would like do the interview outside and we could have some sort of like experimental, like soundscape experience where we all learn how to record the sounds of the environment. But then
I threw damper around that. I was like, but it's going to be so hard to hear us talking.
we figured out too, we probably have to like buy you equipment or something.
Yeah, like it sounds like a great idea, and then the whole episode just sounds like wind just blowing in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is an amazing podcast. I promise you. Just believe me. Yeah, I know. That's the other thing. Eventually, I want to do more live things and like come to people's offices and stuff. But I can't even fix the microphone I have, much less like buy a new one. But
I think they're gonna have to come to you. Like you're gonna have to have a little like space.
I could fit. Yeah, you guys both want to try to come in this room? We can get to know each other really well.
Like a little granny unit over a garage or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do. I have a treehouse in the back. We could do the nature thing and the podcast studio.
Well, we rent space in a church, and they have it's like this old education building that they used to have a lot of classes, I guess, maybe even a school. So they love renting to like creative, artsy people. They probably have a little studio or closet you could use.
Yeah. Could double the size of this closet. Yeah. What kind of space are you guys in?
We, like Stacy said, we're in this inclusive church on Lincoln and Ellsworth, and it's sort of the former school that they had here. So they have a bunch of artists, a couple photographers, hair, stylist, barber. And we share space with Shape Architecture Studio.
Yeah. When I was doing my my internet stalking on you guys, I ran across that, and I was interested to. I see you even like share one employee. It looks like
we do. Wow, that's good stalking.
That is a very recent happening. Yeah.
That's
Kelsey is an amazing wizard.
Yeah, that seems. She's an office manager or all around wizard.
Yeah, studio manager. Yeah.
Nice. So tell me about. Well, okay. So are you? You say you do share a space with Shape, or yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So how did you guys come together with them? I think they're an interesting firm where I haven't had any contact with, but I've stalked them too multiple times, and so they're on the list. But yeah,
they're a motley crew, beautiful people.
Yeah.
Well, Steven is my husband, and he was here in our now shared office space by himself during the pandemic. And then when Diane and he has a partner, Morgan, who actually started Shape several years ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. But Morgan lives in Leadville anyway. But when Steve was here alone during the pandemic and Diane started Superbloom, he was like, why don't you guys come and share this like giant empty space with me? And, because we were working at home and wanted a place that we could meet together. And at the time, it was just Steve and maybe one other person. Mm-hmm. And then both of our practices has grown quite a bit in the last year. So
I actually just showed Helen a photo of what it looked like in March of last year. And it was literally Steve's 2 desks and our 2 desks in an empty room. And now we have like all this.
Now we have like
and conference rooms. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it. You guys are exploding. You're super blooming over there, just growing a lot.
I told Morgan Morgan, the other principal, I was like, all right, Stacy and Steve are here. So what really needs to happen is we can't hate each other.
But yeah, we're actually working with them on at least one project. Working on this 1881 farm park, which it was like really a natural teaming, because this project is, well, the context is this whole community is going to be net zero, and they're setting all these like super stringent sustainability guidelines for the neighborhood. But then that ethos is really important to this farm park, which is all about agriculture and the kind of future of agriculture. So we really wanted to work with architects who are also kind of embracing this idea of like resource efficiency and high performance buildings. And so, yeah.
It seems like a really interesting project. I was looking at that a little bit. So what's the sort of program, or like how did it get started, that project?
So we were asked to participate in a design competition by former client, and they basically said, we've purchased this former ranch property out by the airport in Aurora, and it's about 840 acres, but there's a homestead, a centennial homestead on it, and we want to turn that part into a park and sort of be the locus, the sort of epicenter of the development that kind of expresses the sustainability ethos they really want to make be the kind of main portion of the community. And so, yes, Stacy and I worked on this design competition. I think Helen was here with us at that time, and we won the competition. And we've been working through kind of a second round of concept design, which we finished. Basically, we put forth a concept that was like, we want to celebrate the past of the history of the site, but really look to the future of agriculture and how, growing food in a hotter, drier land, kind of, considering climate change and the development of the community, how can we really kind of merge those two things into a really cool park experience and productive landscape. And so we partnered with Shape on the architecture, and then worked through a kind of concept refinement after the proposal to, kind of suss out what the client wants to do. It's sort of a hybrid of, we gave them two options, and now we're in SD.
Yeah. Man, that's really interesting. I mean, it seems sort of like a dream project in a lot of ways. And you guys, like I was joking around with how much you've grown, but it's really impressive of how much you've grown and like getting that project right away. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So I'm going to make you answer this awkward question of who are you first, and then we'll figure out how you got to this Superbloom point.
Okay.
So,
are you going to
who
ask
are you?
it,
Yeah.
like in that
So
really?
I like to just throw it out there and then just let this awkwardness settle and see which person answers first, or if you answer together, or
it's true. It's harder when it's two people. Well, actually, we're learning this more and more. The world of architecture and design is really set up for like a single kind of like more singular leader, but we're navigating that. But who are we? I mean, I think ultimately one thing that like really brings Diane and I together is that we are kind of intensely curious people, maybe to a fault, which like drove us to be so curious we had to like become entrepreneurs in addition to being designers.
I think I think to piggyback off that, I think, we're futurists. We love thinking about how space and the world and people and animals and everything interact, and how that will happen in the future. We're really interested in deep research. We can probably get into that more for that farm park, but I think, how does the past connect to the future and all of the different facets, geology, culture, politics?
Yeah, I mean, we're really obsessed with design, but we're really interested in process too, like what that design process is, like whether it's a good process that is kind to people.
We're a dynamic duo.
Yeah, I was going to say, as part of my also internet stalking, I don't know if I've had to push the like load more on LinkedIn as much as for you guys, because you have so much different experience in education, and you can kind of just keep scrolling. So in a pretty impressive way, where you guys have a lot of experience in kind of education, and then somehow find each other. So, Diane, where did you grow up? What did you kind of grow up around?
I grew up on the Maryland side of DC. Well, actually, we were talking about this a lot this week for some reason. I think that I cut my teeth unwittingly on design by, my high school experience was taking the metro downtown and going to the free art museums or the free sculpture park or, like all these really cool cultural experiences that are uniquely free in DC.
Yeah.
So I grew up in DC, and then I decided very cavalierly that I wanted to be a film director. So I went all the way across the country to LA to study film at USC. And then after I graduated, I was like, this is great, but like, what about real life? Like, I want to tell stories in real life. And I kind of simultaneously started volunteering for this tree planting organization in LA called Tree People. And they do a lot of, planting in low-income neighborhoods and schools and things like that. And I was working at USC just to kind of figure out what to do, going to architecture lectures, and someone took me aside and was like, have you heard of landscape architecture? I feel like it kind of merges all your things. And it's like, oh, this does seem really cool. That's my DCLA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really interesting. My mom grew up in Washington, D.C., and my grandparents were there. And so we would always go there every summer. And, I grew up in like a really small town in Kansas. And so then going to D.C. and like, I hadn't thought about it much lately, but just how dominated that city is by landscape and by, planning and like the civic realm.
Yeah, you did a studio, didn't you, one time?
I did. In grad school, Gary Hildebrand taught a studio on the National Mall, which was really cool because it was like coming home. But it's a really, important landmark for the country.
Right. But just in the way you really feel dominated by the space, I feel like, like obviously architecturally with sort of monuments that kind of impose on you, but yeah, just even the space of the mall, right? You don't often see such a large sort of green boulevard or space. And that mixing of like storytelling and civic space is interesting. How it wove its way back into you, maybe. But So then Stacy, what about you? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Dallas, Texas, which
also good museums. Yeah.
That is true. Actually, there are some amazing museums in Texas, not just Dallas, and amazing architecture. It's actually really interesting. I would say like opposite to Diane. Yeah, I mean, Dallas is very suburban in spite of its like incredible architecture in limited locations. It's like totally car oriented. It's it was an isolating place to grow up in that sense. And so I just really wanted to go out and be in like a place that you could kind of walk around and take the subway. So I went to college in New York City, much to the chagrin of my parents. Just to kind of, I was very interested in like, Arcosanti and these kind of like utopian models for urban development and like density. Yeah. So I went to New York City.
How did that interest come up? Like, how did Arcosanti come to you in high school or whenever?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I kind of was like interested in utopian, like books that were about utopia. And so I think just by way of that, I kind of like, there's always this kind of element of the environment to a lot of those like utopian stories and, or dystopian stories, depending on which one you're reading. But, I mean, I think what's compelling about things like the arcologies, you know, they're like preserving all this land, this like landscape, and creating this like really interesting social experiment. But
yeah, where it's like total control of landscape and architecture and environment.
Yeah, just like the farms are close to the city, and it's like this whole system.
Everyone's just there making bells, being happy, just life is good. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, so you moved to New York. And
so I went to undergrad there. I moved to Telluride, Colorado, directly after college, and worked for an architect, which is where I met Steve, my husband. And
well, that's not quite an obvious transition. What happened there?
Yeah, it's kind of
you're skipping things.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My neck hurts a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I'm also a very good skier, actually. Weirdly,
one of these like Texans coming up to Colorado,
I grew up the Texans who ski. So like weirdly, my parents were like, Stacy, just get a job. Like you graduated college, just get a job. It doesn't matter what kind of job you get. They were like, you know how to ski. Maybe you could be a ski instructor. And like the same day, actually, I was talking to a friend, and she was like, "Oh, I just moved to Telluride. We have an empty room in a house you could rent. Like, why don't you just move here? You could be a ski instructor." So I was like, "Okay, sure, why not?" So I was a ski instructor, and then I, after that, worked for an architect there for about 5 years, and got really interested in actually urban planning. I was doing a lot of work there, coordinating design review approvals with the Historic and Architectural Review Commission, which is very intense and very complicated, and I was really interested in it. So decided to go for a master's in urban planning, community and regional planning. So I moved to Vancouver, where I did the program at UBC, and I chose that program because I wanted to go to like the most progressive program out there for planning, and one that really embraced like the democratization of planning and kind of like the social experiment of it. And it felt to me at the time like Canada kind of was on the forefront of some of these practices, like in real life, you know, and like when you're studying, the place that you live is really important, especially if it's like planning, you know, you're really like using the city around you as a kind of test case.
What was your undergrad degree in?
It was more or less like urban studies.
Urban studies.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a mailman. There's a mailman here. He's super tough as long as there's like a door between him and the mailman. He likes to scratch on doors, so I have to put bubble wrap on the outside of this door so that he doesn't, he's afraid of the door right now, so it keeps him away a little bit, but okay, so yeah, the regional planning, you want to go somewhere progressive and different. Do you get that there in grad school? Definitely. Yeah.
That's great.
And so you graduate from there, and now what's your next sort of jump?
So then I was offered an internship that turned into a job in West Africa, and I moved to Ghana and lived in Ghana, and then also Nigeria for about 2 years, working on this like community-led development project there. I was working for a foundation that was based in Ghana. And while I was there, I was working really closely with this amazing architect, DK Osiosare, and he had actually gone to the GSD, and he was like talking about ecological urbanism, and we were like designing this whole community and the urban design. It was all around like the landscape. The landscape was like driving every part of the project for a lot of reasons. But so I just got all this exposure to kind of like landscape design. It was like designing landscapes, like building and designing farms, fish farms, everything like flooded several times of the year. And so I kind of like drank the Kool-Aid, I guess. And
they're in Ghana.
Drank the fish. I was in Nigeria as a project,
Nigeria.
But the foundation was based in Ghana at first. Yeah.
Huh. So for 2 years. Wow. Interesting. I've gotten to go to West Africa twice and did a project down there, a little master plan one time in Liberia, and then went back to Gabon again. But 2 years, that's a good long time. So was your husband with you all those steps, or?
No, he was in graduate school most of the time. And then he actually did end up, I was going to leave and go back to the US, and my bosses were like, why? I was like, we were not married at the time. I was like, my boyfriend lives in New York and I want to go home and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, well, what does he do? And I was like, he's an architect. And they were like, great, we'll give him a job. So he actually came and was out there for some period of time as well before we moved back.
Nice. Well, we were talking about the downside of having a firm led by two people. One of them is sometimes one person doesn't talk enough in the podcast or gets skipped. So Diane, back to you. So you're thinking you want to get into a landscape architecture, and how do you end up at the School of the North, as we call it?
Cool. Oh, is that what they call it?
That's what they called it at Yale. I feel like it was meant to be like a put down, but I feel like you could do a lot better as
it's
a put down.
Like the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was working at USC doing admissions and for the honors program, and I was also an academic advisor. So I suppose I fancied myself fairly good at reading between the lines of applications. So I applied to a bunch of programs, one of which was Harvard, and I ended up, I don't know, I guess I didn't have in my mind that I had to go to a certain place, but visited a couple different schools, and certainly the GSD had a lot of really cool people and kind of engaging professors. And so my now husband and I moved from LA there, and did the 3-year program there because I didn't have any background in it other than interest. So I went to the GSD for 3 years, had a lot of, I'm sure you can, relate to having the crew of people that you met there that will be your people forever. Mm-hmm. And then I worked at a firm in the area called Crosby, Schlesinger, Smallridge for a few years. I graduated right after the recession. So it was, amazing time for all. But I found work with this really nice regional landscape architect, CSS, that I keep in touch with still. They're amazing. It's actually a woman owned practice as well.
We also collect mentors, and
we collect mentors.
First people that really offered to talk to us about starting a business, and they gave us some really amazing and generous advice.
Yeah, they're retiring now, and so they were kind of giving us the parting words. Anyways, I worked there for 3.5 years and did a lot of public parks, trails, sort of focused mostly in Massachusetts and New England. And my husband and I were just we really want to go back west. My husband's from South Dakota. I'm from DC. I was let's go back to California. He says, no, this is too warm. Mm-hmm. Colorado is the perfect compromise.
You can be in the shade or you can be in the sun. You get warm or cold. Yeah.
You can ski or you can hike, like so many options.
Exactly. Well, that's really interesting that, you guys, of course, went to the same graduate school, but a few years apart, right?
Almost
and so
10 years apart, right?
Yeah, I graduated in 2010.
You don't need to like put dates to it if you don't want to, but yeah. But the interesting thing is that, yeah, Stacy, you came to the GSD with design degrees, right? Like planning degrees, and Diane, you didn't. So what was your two kind of experiences of grad school for you, Diane, of what surprised you maybe with the school, and what was the biggest thing you kind of came away with?
Oh, that's a good question. I suppose the thing that surprised me the most upon arrival was how little sleep one was expected to get,
right?
Which is hard to function on. Well, there were a couple unexpected things. One was I just had no idea. I mean, I went to USC Film School, so it's not like that was a joke of a program.
Right, yeah.
It was not in the same way. How do I say this? I mean, people were just up all night long for days on end, and there's, kind of an expectation that you do that, at least at the beginning. I think everybody's trying to figure out what it is to be here and what's the expectation here. I would also say that my class in particular of landscape architecture colleagues were all amazing, like really nice and not competitive people, which was something that many professors remarked to us. That was unusual to see, how kind of tight-knit we were with each other. I would say, it was hard, like to go from having no design training to do that. I think by the second year or so, you sort of start to get into a rhythm, because now you've like learned, okay, what's a plan and what's a section? Right. And I forget what the second part of your question was.
Well, and then Stacy, for you, what was it like coming there?
Yeah, I think for me, like, because it was like a mid-career change, like I'd been working as a city planner for the New York City Planning Department for about 5 years also. And it was like this agonizing kind of decision about whether I would go back and get, this was like my second master's degree, which has like huge implications, right? Like I had a career, I was like doing fine. So I like really had to choose it. It was like a really big decision that I made to like be there. So I think that, and because I had maybe more experience and exposure to the field generally, like having worked for architects and worked in the design field and like worked around a lot of people that had those backgrounds, I like was really choosing design. So I had a 1-year-old when I went through the program. Wow. So like, I also had to really like make a lot of choices about like time management. And I think that actually maybe helped me in a way, cause like I wasn't able to really like stay there all night and like,
right. Yeah.
I had to like really prioritize my time. And maybe I had a little more, that was like in my 30s. So I had like a little more experience or like work experience in that way.
Yeah. And then, that second part of the question was sort of like, what was the biggest thing you came away with, or maybe who influenced you most while you were there? Sort of idea or theory wise? Yeah.
Something that I took away from the GSD that I think is true of most, if not all, of the people I meet that went to the GSD is they really know, like you are really trained to talk about your design and kind of persuade people that this, to think critically about your design, and then, really impassioned discussions about it, and then convey your ideas in public setting or with a client, really strong storytellers, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I mean, the level of design thinking and critique and challenge is hard at the beginning, especially for someone who doesn't have design training. But it's sort of like in hindsight, you're like, oh, that was so hard, but I did it, and I can tackle other things now. You know, it kind of gives you this sense of like a challenge, grit.
Yeah, I survived.
Angela Duckworth. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And Stacy, what about you?
I think, I agree with what Diane said. I think also there's like a really strong sense of community that I feel, and just like support generally that I felt there, and I still like that I feel like we take now, even to like as we've been starting Superbloom and kind of the network of just really generous people that we know through that program, and who have been willing to kind of give us advice and talk us through like hard decisions, or, you know, things like that. That's been like tremendous.
Yeah. And so you guys ended up finding each other at Civitas. Is that what happened? You both somehow made it there.
I met Mark Johnson at a coffee shop in New York City.
Do you know what's funny about that? I also met Mark Johnson at a coffee shop in New York City, and we found out
it's the same
it was
one.
the same, like completely randomly.
6 years apart.
6 years apart, the same coffee shop.
I heard he doesn't even work. He just hangs out in that coffee shop all day. That's what I hear.
That's definitely not true. He is like in the office every single day.
Except for those 2 days that you both met him. Right. That's where he finds his best employees. Yeah. So that's really funny. So he's really good in coffee shops. Yeah.
Really good in coffee shops. Well, I mean, Mark Johnson is really like charismatic person in general, but when you hear him talk about landscape, you're like, yes, I want to do that. Let's move to Denver. I met him at a coffee shop in New York, and like 4 weeks later was packing up my 1-year-old and my husband to Denver. And I worked there for about 6 years before I think Stacy came on, and it was like the puzzle piece that was missing that I didn't know about.
Stacy, well, I mean, how did both of you guys get a job bumping into a guy at a coffee shop? What did he say to you? Okay. I thought it was literally like, oh, excuse me, sir, I need to pass by. And he said, have you heard about landscape architecture in Colorado?
No, we like separately, I think.
Okay. That makes more sense.
And it just happened to be, I guess it was his neighborhood coffee shop maybe, but.
Okay. So then what did you, I mean, I'm really interested with Civitas, and I haven't had any contact with them, but what was that experience like in that sort of environment? What do they do well?
I mean, Civitas is hands down one of the best landscape architecture firms in the country, and they really seek out challenging projects, which I think was exciting for us, and like just great experience. You know, they like complicated projects that require a lot of like synthesis, you know, like bringing together a lot of different programmatic, maybe like conflicts or just opportunities to kind of like solve problems, I think is how they might say it. I mean, we can't speak for them, but
yeah, but at least of what you gained from there, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, they like Stacy said, they're really involved in the kind of early planning or urban design portion of things. They're really unafraid of tackling things with political challenge that might take years to solve. But they take that, you know, I think a lot of firms kind of specialize either in that or like high design with refined detail. And I think they do both really well. So for me, at least being there for 8 years was long enough to see through some projects that went from that early phase to the built phase. And so it was a really good experience for me to kind of see all of those phases and kind of soak up some of that knowledge and participate in it.
And so you're there for 6 years, and then this missing puzzle piece walks in the door one day. And what was that experience of saying, okay, let's start a firm together? How did that come about?
Well, I mean, we worked on a few projects together, and that was really great. We worked really well together. But I think we started maybe hanging, like we went camping together, our families went camping together. And I think that was like when we really like started talking about it maybe seriously.
I mean, sitting over a campfire with a beer or a hot cup of something is like, then you start really talking about things.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that was interesting to us, like at Civitas, we were working on projects all over the country, and that was really, really cool. It was great. But then I think we also were like, we'd like to work on projects kind of more regionally too. We really love the West, and we're really interested in a lot of the issues that we're confronted with here today and in the future with like water shortages and loss of biodiversity and kind of the rapid growth of cities, and just not just cities now, like
but Colorado too.
The entire Intermountain West is like growing so rapidly. So I think we're just, like kind of intrigued by this idea of maybe, working more regionally and kind of building that community around us as well, with kind of
we being the ones going and meeting people in a coffee shop. Why not?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a pandemic going on. You say, all right, let's do it. Let's start this firm. When you started, 9 months ago?
We decided before the pandemic happened, and then we
delayed a little bit because of the pandemic. Because now, fast forward to now, we both have 2 kids, and I don't know if you have kids, but kids during the pandemic is like a whole other beast of a design challenge.
How old are your kids now? I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Mine are 10 and 7.
Oh, okay.
I have 2 and 6.
2 and 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good time to start a firm.
Good ages for pandemic. I mean, I feel like we're all like, who likes the pandemic? No one.
But I mean, once you go down that path, I mean, like we said, we're like maybe curious to a fault. We were like, well, what would this be like? Like we've got to try it. I mean, let's say like, for better or worse, I would say like a lot of these graduate schools, maybe yours as well, like they kind of encourage leadership, which is great. And I think that also lends itself to like a certain interest in entrepreneurship, or kind of also this idea of like designing your own practice. And
that is a really fun part of it, but I wasn't even totally sure how fun it would be, but the pandemic thing, I think, we delayed a little bit, mostly because of the school situation, but at some point, I don't know if it was me or you, but we were just like, we've got to do it. We've got to do it now. We've got to just like cut the cord, rip the Band-Aid, break out. Hopefully.
So was there a project that came first, or did you hang the shingle first and say, okay?
We didn't really have any projects. I mean, we had like relationships with a couple architects that indicated they might be interested in working with us.
One that you live with?
Actually,
no. We have some relationship with some architects. Yeah.
Well,
so do I. I'm married to one too.
The main one.
Yeah. Remember when we started, it was just 2.
Oh, that's true.
That little empty room.
The main thing was like actually the architect I used to work for in Telluride. So he was kind of like, there really aren't that many landscape architects out here, We always need like landscape partners to get involved early on in the process.
Who's that architect?
His name's Tommy Hine.
Oh, okay.
He does a lot of residential projects down there. So we were like, well, maybe we could start off with, residential work in the mountains and just see what happens. But yeah, some people were like, oh my gosh, that's so, whoa, oh my God, you guys are kind of, whoa, that's interesting, wow. And then other people were like, oh, this is the best time to start a business. Really good idea, guys. You know, like, I think people had really different reactions to it. Right.
You know, yeah, I've interviewed so many people on here, and I always try to ask that question, you know, of like how it started. And like, you know, there's some people that say, no, you have to have a project. And some people said, I didn't have a project for 300 days. And, you know, but.
Well, I think we wanted to start and spend time like making a website, like defining
crafting the mission and vision
and our mission. And like, we wanted to spend time, because you can't do that when you're working somewhere else. I mean,
exactly.
Like, I don't even think we had a name maybe when we left.
Yeah, we did.
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay. We maybe had a name.
I love that name. You know, finding a name like for our firm, it took us, I don't know, two or 3 years, it feels like, and just hundreds of options. But so what was that like for you guys? It seems like such a perfect name. Did it come right away? Did it over a campfire with the whiskey and like?
No, we were just like listing names, terrible names. And then I don't know, like I don't remember.
I think, well, I'm sure you did something similar, but we had some sort of like running document with like a bazillion names. Yep. And I think you put Superbloom down, and I was like, that's it.
I think one day
then
I
you
just
second
like
thought it. You were like, no, I don't know. And I was like, no.
That's true. I think one day I just like heard the name somewhere. I was like, added it to the list, and you were like, where did that name come from?
I was like, that is it right there. It's everything. It's the West. It's about, you know, nurturing design from the ground up. And we like lightly shopped it to friends. Like, what's your take on this name? And the majority of people were like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think we really love the metaphor of it for design. This kind of practice of laying the groundwork, you know, sort of like this latent potential inside the soil to create kind of something spectacular, but like in this almost indirect way, you know.
And we had, and our logo, one of my good friends is a graphic designer, and we were telling her our story of how we came up with the name and the latent potential of design, and she comes up with that beautiful, like, it's just so simple. It's that line with the Superbloom under.
Yeah,
I love
really
it.
Good.
Yeah. So excuse my ignorance here, but what's a Superbloom?
Superbloom is this kind of rare phenomenon, and typically in the American West, where it's just the perfect ground conditions have been laid with seed in the ground, moisture. It's when you have the perfect kind of seed conditions, soil conditions, and then you get intense rains in the West, in the arid West, that you suddenly have this wild bloom. It's a super bloom of flowers. Like, I think sometimes people will flock to the ones in California. They don't happen very often. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's perfect. Stacy, you're a genius.
Lucky.
So, but you know, it's super interesting to me. So how many employees do you have right now? How many people are working?
Including ourselves, we're 6, so we have 4.
Yeah, I mean that in itself, you know, I've had a firm for I think like 6 months, and that step of hiring a first person seems so far away or so difficult, and you guys are just like growing like crazy. What was that like, saying that first time saying, okay, we need somebody else, and when did it come about?
Well, yeah, I mean, we definitely thought it would be the 2 of us. I mean, we were for sure like, wow, will we even have enough work for the 2 of us? But was it the 1881 project?
Well, we had probably in April hired some freelancers to sort of help with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And we got We got 1881 by June.
Yeah, I mean, we had this sort of like steady stream of like Telluride projects. We got a trio of pocket parks in Englewood through this really cool developer that Diane met through the planning and zoning.
I used to be on the planning board in Englewood.
And then, the other thing that was like a big project was when we were at Civitas, we were working on the Wild Bear Nature Center with Arc 11 and Civitas. And I guess in like March, Civitas, or they called us and they were like, the client really wants to keep like the team together. Would you guys consider like staying involved? Because it's like a nonprofit and there's a lot of like passion and knowledge that kind of went into those concepts, and just like it's just an amazing like passionate group of people working on that project. So we were like, absolutely, we'd love to do that.
Okay, yeah.
So that was like a bigger project that came to us. We're still working with Civitas and Arc 11, both on that project, which is great.
And then we got a park in Castle Rock through a former client. But sort of all of these things, as they pile up together with deadlines and stuff, we're like, well, we might need a little help, but not enough necessarily to feel comfortable hiring someone full time. But yeah, we got 1881, and that's like a big project that needs nurturing and love and care. So we hired the first full-time person. Well, technically we hired our first full-time employee like by August.
Yeah. We started with like independent contractors, and then things kind of evolved from there.
And so we've brought them on full-time now.
Yeah.
And it's been
filling up your space. Yeah.
Yes. It's a scary moment to like, I don't know how you felt, but I feel very responsible for people. So just, making sure we felt like, okay, we're taking these people on and wanting to make sure that we can nurture their career and their growth and like put their food on their table. Like we wanted to, be really careful to do that at the right time. But and it's as it's like very different, like a partnership versus like a team. And I think when that happened, we really had to immediately think about like, what is our culture? Like, what is the environment, the work environment we want to create for people that we're working with every day. So we're trying, we're just sort of learning as we go. We've had to obviously like draw from different kinds of like experts or mentors. We have like all the support outside of our office in a way. We've got like CPA, bookkeepers. We have 2 different like coaches. We have like a kind of like leadership coach, and we also have like a business coach. What else? We were very grateful and lucky for some of the mentors that we've had who have given of their time to us purely because they want to see us succeed. And we've had just a really, like the leadership coach gave of her time to us. And I think it was so invaluable to help make sure that we like had a good partnership, because we weren't like, we grew up together and we know each other and each other's minds yet, but like helped us forge a really good partnership. And
also like, what are the values that we share that we can like, how do we communicate those to our colleagues? Like how does that translate into this environment that we're creating? It would be, anybody who wants to do this, if you can find that coach that can be like, even if it's just someone who's not maybe like certified, but like who's, that person. Like, it was also just, the space to like talk about those things. Cause like, I think it also would have been, you get like caught up in the projects and it's hard to like stop and kind of be like, okay, what's going on here? Like,
yeah. When you have 1,000 things going on, it's hard to stop and think about culture or about maybe your own relationships, or, you know, and it's easy to let those things fester sometimes, or, Have you guys figured out sort of like lanes or responsibilities, or how you work together? You know, like my partner and I now, you know, it's just two of us and we're kind of doing the same things, and, you know, you kind of run into each other sometimes, but that idea of who does what and
where
the overlap is.
Long and evolving conversations.
I think for us, the design part is the part that we both like were like wanting to overlap on always. Mm-hmm. So, but then there's the marketing, and then there's the business, like financial stuff. And we've been like hitting the pavement, like talking to people, like just, you know, talking to architects, talking to developers, talking to, like, someone said, oh, you should talk to this PR person we know. And we're like, we can't afford a PR person. Like, just talk to her and just see what you can cull from her brain. And she says, the first thing I tell any new company is don't wait 10 years like I did to hire a business consultant to help you figure out how to make your business operate, because you didn't go to school for that. Like, we didn't go to school for business.
Right.
So she's like, just hire them to help you get it moving and get the systems in place.
I think, we try to recognize like what our strengths are, and then find other people that can support us who do a better job at the things that we're not that good at, or that we don't know, you know, that we'd have to research all day long to like figure out the answer to, so that in a way, like, then we get to spend more time doing the thing that's like our core craft, and also what we love doing, why we went into this business.
It's always hard.
Like, so our shared lane is design, and then I kind of do like the business stuff, and Stacy does more of the marketing stuff.
But on project to project, we like take turns, you know, like one one thing we've learned is that people like to know who's in charge, or like who's the primary contact. So when we
started, and we're like, both of us, you can call either one of us.
We're
it doesn't
partners,
matter.
we're friends.
And sometimes that's great, you know, like if one of us is busy, the other person can like fluidly step in. It's great. But then, sometimes people want to deal with one person, and that makes sense too. And so we do that. Like for each of our projects, one of us is kind of like usually directing like the external team. And so like more coordinating with the client, with the consultants, kind of running the project schedule. Then the other person, depending on the size of the project, is like more running the internal team. So kind of like drawings and output, I guess, production.
Yeah. And let's talk about that sort of shared lane. You know, it seems I like following your Instagram, like a lot of great sort of concept images and models. And then it seems like you guys have fun, like a lot of kind of like field days and things like that, like getting out into nature. Talk about sort of your idea of the design of your design process, if you have that, or how you guys like to work.
Our Fieldwork Fridays probably started because it was just you and me. we wanted to go outside and not be stuck in our houses with our children on Zoom calls. But I mean, I think in talking about all the culture of what, and our mission and our vision for how we want to, you know, tackle the kind of wicked challenges of landscape and community and all that. I think, you know, one of them is health and wellness, and just going outside, walking, kind of getting our hands dirty are like important things to not only just kind of keep our brains fresh, but like also just to kind of get us inspired and keep us engaged. And I mean, I'm sure you can relate, like we could spend all day, all night on our computers sitting in a room. But especially in landscape architecture, sometimes you just need to go out and do that walk and like, you know, like feel what kind of dirt it is, or, you know, something just to kind of get yourself into a different headspace.
I think too, like, it takes so many different types of people to do the work that we do to make these really complicated projects happen. And it's like an opportunity to have encounters outside of ourselves. Like, you never know if you're at a site, you're going to run into like maybe the construction manager, someone working adjacent, like the conversations you might have, or like, I think in the future, we love the idea of even meeting other experts, like maybe soil scientists, or, learning something about their processes, or an artist, like just to kind of like inform our work in a different way, like we don't have all the information within ourselves, or even the only interpretation of a place. So I think just getting outside like that is a reminder of, like our connectedness to like all these other inputs and ways of thinking and knowledge, and So that's, I think too, like there have been so many times where like you'll be designing like at your desk, which is where you do, right? And then you'll go to the site and you're like, whoa, oh my gosh, like this feels so different than I imagined. Like it's bigger, or it's smaller, or like we're working on this project in Castle Rock and we had all these like really cool ideas, but then we went there and you're on this like precipice and you're looking at the mountains, like entirely, like the whole mountain range. But what's even crazier about it, you're actually looking at the sky. Like
we're kind of set up like 30 feet above the street below.
So it's like this dramatic, like cloudscape experience. Like the beautiful mountains are there, but like you're like in the sky because you're really high up. So just like going there, we were like, oh my gosh, like that's our concept. Like this is like all about the clouds and like the experience of the clouds and like learning about the clouds. So like we've taken that and like informed the design of this park, which formally like draws from kind of, cloud shapes or cloud kind of, aesthetics, I guess, and color. But we're also doing this like really cool sign. Like, normally you go somewhere and you're like, it's the mountains and they're all labeled, like all the peaks and stuff. But this is actually like a really cool piece of art, like a infographic with his, like not too many words, but it's like just these drawings of like the different types of cloud formations that you find here at the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains, like why they kind of form on the side of the mountains, and then a little bit about like how things are changing because of climate change and some of those impacts. So
I think, and we had gone to the site, but it was like the revisiting of the site is like you have sometimes that moment where you're like, oh yes. I don't know. I think sometimes it's good to go there and then do the like 10 quick sketches of like what are your ideas for this, and then go back and say like, because you can kind of get in your head, or you can get in your computer about it.
Yeah.
Or you could just go and probably make the decision a little faster than if you spent 10 hours toiling at your computer.
I think just to like jump in about the design process question, like this is maybe not being in the field, but I think we do 3D modeling maybe like a little sooner than at least like other places I've worked. Like pretty much immediately, like we're in Rhino or like modeling sites, even if it's like rough and kind of loose, just because, these spaces, as you know, like architecture, I think integrates this a little bit better just because of the kind of tools and softwares you guys have. But I think we immediately are trying to like experience or design in 3 dimensions from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, and even like your physical models that you've posted, I don't see a lot of landscape models.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah, I like that clay model. Diane, what's been a project that you really feel like maybe you knocked it out of the park, or that all these ideas from grad school and from Civitas or wherever come and it's like, okay, that worked well. That's what I believe landscape architecture is at its best.
I mean, I think that the 1881 park is probably the like greatest synthesis of the things that are important to us, interesting to us, exciting for us. I mean, it's about food systems. It's about, community health. It's about how you can honor the past, but, think about a resilient future. That one just hits so many different angles for us. And also we have an amazing client who has been really supportive of us reaching out to people all over the state, culinary farmers, hydroponic experts, folks at the ag school at CSU, or folks who are working on the Spur campus here in Denver, and really excited about us doing that kind of connective door-to-door research.
Yeah, that project is amazing.
He said it's a dream project.
Yeah, and the fact that you got that so early, it's one thing to have to make ideas for your firm, or to have these ideas and ideas of sort of design, but then normally you don't get a client that allows you to do that very quickly. And
I think what was unique about that was because it was a design, they were selecting based on design. Like a newish emerging firm, if we were maybe just going on credentials, as probably it'd be really difficult to compete. But because we were given the opportunity to show our ideas and our ability with graphics and things like that, I think it helped, obviously.
Yeah, we had the benefit, at Civitas, I worked on a project called Painted Prairie, and so had fairly recently been through the permitting process at Aurora, and so, they were aware that is something we could do. And then, I think we showed them a really cool vision for what that place could be.
Yeah. And then that idea of bringing a lot of different people in is interesting. Mm-hmm. And just your relationships within the design realm in general here. What's your idea of community, or what is your community here? How do you engage with others, or who do you engage with?
That's a really good question. We've really loved your podcast, actually. Not to be your groupies, but seriously, I think there aren't a lot of venues for talking to other people, or just kind of learning about their work. And there's been so many, you've done so many cool interviews, and they're just things I would have never even thought about, hearing about Sushi Den and how they were this challenge around the bamboo and how they're going to grow, just these cool stories that you're whoa, this is Denver, So I think that's really cool that what a commitment it is that you're doing this. I think it's really amazing. But I think from our own initiative, just trying to, if we encounter someone we're interested in, trying to have a conversation with them, or sometimes that leads to working together. We had early, a year ago, took a walk with this artist that now is one of our favorite people, and helps us sometimes.
You're not the only one who Google stalks and Instagram stalks people.
Good. I love finding those other stalkers. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
I think we are looking for people doing cool stuff around Colorado, and we see someone that looks really cool. We're just hey, can we have coffee? I think we've, just been trying to cultivate those relationships with as many people as we can, because, we just like hearing from and talking to and learning about other people's journeys. But I think at the end of the day, we're collaborators, which is why we probably wanted to do a firm of two people rather than just one. But there's also I would say there's a really cool thing that I've noticed, at least since we started Superbloom, where, you get a little bit more of the like entrepreneur folks who are like, oh yeah, you guys started a thing. So did I. Let's talk. How did that happen? How did that go? Tell me more.
What accounting program do you use? Yeah.
That's a question.
I know. I mean, I think we talk about this sometimes. Like, I think we have a dream that like someday we could host like dinners or like a big dinner, like a long table, and just like invite lots of different people and like have conversations with them. And
I mean, at USC I studied film, but like at the end of the day, I think we're both like really into a wide range of knowledge, sort of like, dare I say, Renaissance people. But you know, I think that we love talking to people of all different kinds of interests, and so I think we've just been trying to cultivate those networks everywhere.
And this is like a pretty exciting time for Denver too. Like there's just so much growth happening, and people trying different things and creating really interesting spaces.
Yeah, and new people coming in, and a lot of life. I mean, I think it's interesting, you know, the idea before talking about sort of collecting mentors, and I love that, you know, and you, that helps, of course, when you're both doing that and you're bringing more people in. But then, you know, you're probably definitely already at that point where then people are trying to collect you as a mentor, you know, younger people reaching out and sort of being on both sides of that. And I mean, and being, you know, a fully woman-owned office and all women in the company, right? I mean, pretty unique in that sense, and have to get a lot of people looking up to you or asking advice or, you know, coming to you.
Yeah, I mean, we love doing that, and people do reach out, and like I think it's exciting because it's like an opportunity to return the favor. Yeah, I mean, so many people, not just like for our business, but I think for each of us through our careers have been very supportive and just talked to us at different points. And so I think we're always really excited when somebody, like, we have that opportunity to give back in that way.
I think, well, one thing that I've been so surprised about, I don't know why, but is just the pass it on mentality. I mean, literally like the collecting mentors thing. I wasn't anticipating how generous people would be with their time for us to ask questions about how'd you start your business? What challenges did you run into? What would you recommend like we look out for? Or, I mean, we had many people be very, very generous with their time talking to us. Like across the country, even like from my former bosses in Boston to like agency,
Gina Ford and Bree Hensel to
Unknown Studio in Baltimore. I mean, it was just like
Gary Hildebrand.
I mean, lots of folks who are just like it's nice to know that it's not a field where everyone has to feel like they're in competition. It's like, we want more good design everywhere. So we'll lift everyone up.
Yeah. And like you're saying, all these different skill sets or whatever, you know, they come together to, raise all ships. Yeah. Well, you know, it was fun meeting both of you at CU, you know, and just in that way of, you know, we normally, for reviewers, it's always architects, and you get kind of a certain point of view, and then having you both in to look at the projects. And, you know, it's funny, Stacy was in for mid-crits, and I talked to her, and I have Superbloom, and cool. And then
actually, I came back and told Diane, I was like, I met this guy, and he was like, he'd heard of us, and I was like, totally shocked. I was like, how is that even possible? And
that is funny because I'd seen your Instagram, and like I said, big stalker, and good work, and I was like, I just saw that, and but then it was funny because then the next review when Diane came in, and I work I'm at Superbloom, and I said, what did I say? I said like, you're with Superbloom, and you said, no, I am Superbloom. And I was like, well, I thought I met somebody else who was Superbloom, but Maybe you didn't say it quite like that, but it was fun. No. But anyway, the point of that story was just it was fun to meet both of you there, and then to stay in contact. And it's great to see just the sort of quality of work and design process that I think you guys put out there and cultivate these environments. And I look forward to hopefully working together and seeing what you guys do in the future. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun to chat with you too.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
You can visit architecting.com, that's architect-ing.com, to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.
Okay, time out. So that was the interview part.
That was the interview. Okay.
I should tell people this beforehand, because it's always this awkward thing where I'm like ending it. I try to end it kind of around an hour, and then everybody's like, "Oh, well, goodbye." But I used to really hit like end, and then I would call the person afterwards, and then we'd have better conversation after that than the interview normally, because you're like more relaxed. But I never had it recorded, so now I just like pretend like it's over, and now we talk about whatever, and then if something makes it on the podcast, okay. Yeah.
This is the blooper reel. Is that what
this
I'm hearing?
This is the blooper reel. Yeah. So go wild. Yeah. This is.
Should I grab beer?
Yeah.
Well, one thing we noticed, you ask people often like who their influences are, and like, or who their professor that influenced. I'm kind of curious, like, about that question. Why you like who are your influences?
That's a good question. I think like you, I really strove for mentors, and I had in undergrad I had like 3 really strong mentors that really molded me. These guys from Kansas State, but Larry Brown and Vladimir Kristic and Ray Streeter, but people that really kind of set me down a path, and I've kept up with, and I worked for Larry Brown as well for a little bit. But then going to grad school, it was based on like advanced studios, and so people came in and you really kind of learned with one person for a semester, and so. One of the reasons I came to Yale was for Dan Wood. He worked at Work. He has Work AC
really?
Out of New York, but he worked with. He was a partner at OME for a long time, and so I was really interested in their work. And that's actually we went to Gabon with him, and sort of worked on projects down there. And so I think he influenced me in one way. I had Peter Eisenman for a semester, and a really gruff influence. But I think it was a really interesting experience of like architecture for architecture's sake, like this pure architecture that has really influenced me. And then the last professor was Tatiana Bilbao from Mexico City, and that was a really amazing experience. The last sort of semester of grad school, and I then went with my wife, and we worked for her after.
Wow, that's amazing.
Your wife is also an architect?
She's also an architect, yeah.
Well,
and I think she's just sort of my biggest mentor, the person I look up to most, I think, in her way. I don't know if you know her work too much, but her way of, she's really, definitely. Integrated with the art world, but also, really urban thinking and attainable housing and just sort of low and high, and how she mixes those two things.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, now I have like all these questions for you, but we're landscape architects, and you're an architect. You usually interview architects. What do you think about, like, is there a difference between the way landscape architects practice and architects, or do you think like design is kind of more integrated?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that, I don't know if you heard the interview with Laurel and with Ransom. How can I forget Ransom Beagle's name? But obviously there's a sort of a public understanding of what landscape architecture is, right? Here's a tree, or whatever. But just
what is that? The public understanding?
That's what everybody tells me. They say, "Oh, landscape architecture. Here's a tree. Here's a tree." No. But I think just that idea of crafting space and narratives in both architecture and landscape, I think is really similar. And I'm more bitter because I tried to go to Harvard for the urban design degree and I didn't get in, but so I almost went into kind of urban design, just because I'm more interested in that kind of larger scale of shaping space, which obviously a lot of overlap there. I think that I'm interested to hear what you guys think about the differences or similarities, but one thing that Laurel brought up that was interesting was just the sort of the timeline of architecture versus landscape. Architecture you have as kind of finished building and finished product that ages, but like your design, grows over time and changes, and you're thinking about the sort of phasing of it and how that works.
Like day one is usually not the best day for the landscape photo.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's true. They're living environments and live matter.
What do you think about that? I mean, especially married to an architect, the similarities and differences between sort of design process or outcome, or?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's also very individual, kind of like depends on the person. But I mean, I think Diane and I also, like when we look at a project, try to think about like what's needed here, like not necessarily is it landscape or architecture, like, starting like from that view of like, what's the design's opportunity, broadly, like, and sometimes maybe it is architecture, sometimes it's landscape, sometimes it's somewhere in between. I think, we like our discipline, but I think it's also nice to feel comfortable moving with and kind of between, so that you're really just like thinking holistically, because if you're just like sticking to your narrow, like, okay, this is what's in the scope of what I'm supposed to do. Like, maybe you're missing an opportunity.
I was going to say, I feel like it depends on the architect, because some architects are really kind of like projective, like they want to find, like either they're given land or they're given a program or something, and they're like supposed to like make a nature center or make a high-rise condo or whatever. Whereas landscape architects, I think, are frequently tasked with what do we do with this place? We don't know what to do with this place. And like Stacy said, it's like, it could be, based on the need of the community. I mean, this is sort of like an urban design question, is, what does the community have? Like, you kind of have to like scale out
and like the system of it, maybe.
Yeah. Whereas, I think some architects do like to work in that realm, but some are like, I've definitely worked with architects who are like, no, but what's the program? Like, what's the program? Like, how big is it? What's the square footage of this program?
One thing I really like about the architectural process that I think landscape architects could really bring in more is the materiality element. I think there's, for obvious reasons, maybe it's like the questions of choice in materials, like where they come from, like how they're crafted and the fabricate, like all the detail of that material, and like that as like a driver from the beginning, I think is really successful in a lot of architects' practices. I think we try to also like bring in.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot more product manufacturers who are trying to do innovative things with architectural materials. And it's like trying to find more like-minded folks who will do things in an exterior environment.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think, that idea of zooming out from a large scale and thinking about placemaking, but then you like automatically have to zoom in really, really quickly to those things, those little things that make that environment too, right? I mean, and that's, it goes to sort of the materials or what that is. Let's see. Any other questions we didn't get to that you had some great answers to? Some good stories or worst day ever, best day ever?
Oh, the best day ever was hands down the day Terry Moto started following us on Instagram. I think everybody I know is like, look, your favorite people started liking you.
That's awesome. You're like, yeah. Like they clicked the heart button on this one. It was them. Yeah.
And now they like our posts sometimes. They're like, ooh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Like Stacy at one time was like, do you want to work here or do you want to work at Terry Moto? You bring them up all the time.
I want to work at a place that Terry Moto likes. That's what you got it both. But it is interesting, that idea that, you can kind of, you do some, like not hero worship, but sort of, right? You put people on pedestals but then having that approach of, I'm going to reach out to everybody and anybody, for mentors. And it's rare that people turn you flat down, and people who you think aren't approachable turn out to like your stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, how about you? Like when you ask people to do the podcast, it seems like I would imagine most people say yes.
Yeah. Lately, I'd say in the beginning, I had sort of my group of people, like my friend, the people I knew that I was able to reach out to. And then there was sort of ones that were a harder reach. And I would say in the beginning, I was like 50% just never returned emails. And now, I get a lot of people reaching out and like kind of booked longer out. So yeah, it's a little easier. But the benefits of that.
Yeah.
What is forgive me, I haven't listened to all of your podcasts, but what is the
That'd be a lot.
This is the craziest, most wild one that you should definitely listen to. Like I was surprised by what whoever it was said.
I think the wildest one and definitely the longest one was Paul Anderson. I don't know if you've.
I listen to that one. Yeah.
He's a friend and a really interesting guy, and he thinks very differently, and so. He was, I kind of have this like set kind of rhythm or story that I kind of try to stick with. And he was like way off of it from the very beginning. And like, he like texted me 5 minutes before our interview started. And he said, I think we should talk about our 5 favorite Colorado buildings. And I was like, well, I have to think about that for like an hour, not 5 minutes before. And then that went down a real like rabbit hole for a while, and it kind of just kept going back to like what is good architecture or what is good design, and it's such a ephemeral thing that we go to, and you can take it kind of down a moralistic road or more qualitative maybe, but so that was, but I think it was like pushing 2 hours almost, something like that.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I really liked your interview with Rick Summerfield. I mean, I didn't know that much about him, just a little bit about like Colorado Building Workshop and admiring them from afar, like the work. But yeah, it was just interesting. I didn't realize he had such a like connection to architecture that went way back.
That's
and
so cool.
Yeah.
that was kind of interesting to hear about.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, and then in the project you guys came to review, he was coordinating that project, and those projects at Nature Center, so integrated into the design and into the landscape. I mean, and that was a fun project with just great models.
Did you know Linnea before?
I did not. Nope.
Okay.
No.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys format your other studios, but I loved the way you guys formatted that, because at least when I saw it, it was like really specific. Like it was like one image or two images and like a model. And I just thought it was really great. Like this idea that you're not like investing in the chaos of like creating all this extra stuff. You're just like really invested in creating a really good design and representing it, like really like in one image, like express this project, It's like, I think it just like gives you the opportunity to really like think about the design rather than think about all the like.
Yeah.
It's probably an exercise in editing, right?
Yeah. Well, and Stacy, that project that you came for was interesting because it was a like quick warm up design exercise, and so it was kind of supposed to be like a competition where they had only like 4 weeks, and so that was kind of getting back to this idea of storytelling or just telling an idea. Yeah, it's nice that you picked up on that. Like they didn't have much time, get to that idea, make 2 good images, and move forward. But and Diane, because you came for the final, I think, was that right? Or
I came for a mid review, but I was only able to come for like an hour, so I think I saw a couple, and then I came for the final.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was a little more thought out or like larger project, but it still is nice, right? When you can just focus on this little project in school and don't have to worry about the politics of it or whatever, or you really just focus on the politics or whatever, but you're able to focus and do what you want.
Yeah, it's really such a good practice. I mean, I don't know if like all students like are able to embrace that as much as they should, but like I think learning that like you're making your own decisions and like really trying to stand up for what decisions you're making or like what your design is. It's like, I mean, graduate school is just so good for that.
Right. Yeah. It's so key
like
for,
when you get in the outside world, it's like you're just constantly being influenced by everything.
Yeah. And to be able to let yourself be influenced, but then still have a strong approach and not be kind of blown around in the wind and say, this is what it's about. And this is why we're the best for it. And don't get rid of our cloud art. We need that cloud art. Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I am just so impressed with you guys, how fast you're growing. I think that idea of sort of bringing in business coaches and things, like it's always like, that's going to cost that much money. Is that worth it? Or is this worth it? Or which things you outsource and don't. And, but it seems like you guys are figuring it out well.
I mean, definitely. Yeah. Unlike if Civitas was doing it, you're like, okay, whatever they want to do with their money. And you're like, okay, it's directly affecting us.
Yeah.
But I think it's like by articulating, it's like the intention, like by taking the time to set that intention, it's helping us be really clear about the work we want to do. And so I think partially that's, attracting or bringing these connections with clients that have projects that are aligned with like our wheelhouse and interests and passions,
I do think like there is an amount as far as like hiring out people or like farming out for help, like there is an amount of like, okay, how much of this can I do? If I can do it, how long is it going to take me? Mm-hmm. And do I have that time, or would I be able to like sustain my livelihood better if I actually was doing the design work and someone spent a few hours of their time doing that thing that they're really good at that, you know, we could probably do. I mean, we're
right.
hustlers and all, but you know,
how many hours
of reading on the internet.
Yeah.
For sure.
My billable rate over here versus my over here.
Right.
Yeah. And then it's just about like finding those people too.
Yeah.
Well, the business advisor one we got through Stacy met someone who said, you should talk to this PR lady. We talked to this PR lady and she's like, I don't think you can afford me, but you know who you should really talk to is this business advisor. She's very reasonable, but she like tripled my income or like our revenue in 1 year from the previous year. And that definitely, we were like, really? Okay.
So is she setting up like, you know, like, okay, here's how you structure your company, here's how you do taxes, here's how that, or is it more of like strategy?
She's not a tax guru. I'm sure she is.
It's more like helping us like project our revenue and what are our expenses, like helping us make decisions about hiring.
Yeah.
And like, you know, workflow.
We probably would have been slightly more trepidatious if she wasn't sitting there with like a year-long projection going like, no, you need to hire them. You need to hire them now.
Yeah.
It's like it's like she already does all that. It's like something she knows. So for us, we have to like start over if we are creating that kind of analysis.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and again, it's just so hard to carve out that time, you know, or you do, and then you don't get all the other stuff done that you need to. But okay, cool. Can you send me her contact after this?
Definitely. I was going to ask, would you like us to connect you?
Yes, please.
Well, it's very impressive. Yeah. Like all the things you were doing. I mean, podcasts, teaching, practice. Who knows what else you're doing?
Yeah.
Maybe taking time in the mountains occasionally.
Yeah. I was really, people say that to me a lot, and I was really like falling apart. Like, it's like, I was doing too much, especially a few weeks ago. And, I'm like breaking down. So I have to make some changes, and you can't do it all, but it's hard to kind of choose. But yeah, to get through it.
Yeah. Well, we should, when we have our big dinner.
Yeah.
It'll be.
If you want two more architects at the table, yes.
Of course.
Yeah. And, you know, and I mean, this is the goal of like future of this is to just have a lot more live events, and like I've been thinking about sort of like just even like happy hour or like happy hours, but more of like just we have a little topic, and we have a little bit of a panel, and maybe it gets recorded, maybe it doesn't, but it's just like turns into this thing where we just kind of hang out and talk. And because I agree, there's just not enough of that, you know, and so I definitely let you know. It's just another thing to like plan, you know. But
well, we have a studio manager who can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
she loves making parties.
Yeah. Well, yeah, seriously, if you guys want to think about, what I'm really bad at is like, I like hearing people's stories, but I'm really bad at like talking about a subject or like talking about like important things that are going on or stuff like that. But if you guys have an idea of something that you'd think would be interesting to discuss with some people, you know, we could kind of come together and make it into an event and get Modern Denver involved or whatever. And
climate change dinners.
I mean, we didn't say this in the interview, but that's actually kind of like how we, like, in addition to the camping,
that's
like,
actually kind of mostly how we
kind of
like
how
really bonded and decided to do
we
this.
like really wanted to organize some like, I don't know, conversations with people in Denver, and didn't really have the opportunity to do that. So we were like, maybe if we start our own business, we can do that.
Yeah. Think about it. Let's, like I said, I'm kind of like maxed out mentally. And so if anybody else, And really thanks for reaching out to me. Like I was planning to have you guys on, but it was nice. I always love when like people, ask and obviously it's architects, but the goal is that it is diversified a little more. So.
Well, it was actually, we just had coffee yesterday with the director of ULI. He's new.
Oh yeah,
he's really awesome. You should talk to him. We can connect you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He lived in Atlanta and he was doing all this amazing stuff in Atlanta.
He worked for 8 years as a community planner, and so he's got some really interesting. He was given a lot of responsibility to do some really crazy, cool projects. But and then he worked at the Atlanta Beltline, which is a really cool greenway kind of through Atlanta. But yeah.
And then moved out here just before the pandemic. And now he's the director of the ULI Colorado.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be good. I want to get more involved with ULI, sort of diversify outside of architecture.
We just joined and we went to their, I don't know what the name of the conference was, but we were like, let's go to the first conference.
It was called Future Trends in Development in Colorado or something.
And we really just wanted to meet people and see what they were talking about. And yeah, he was very charismatic and interesting.
What was really interesting about that conference too was that they were talking about climate change. It was I think that surprised me because I guess I think of maybe people in the development world being less embracing of that perhaps, or maybe resistant to planning for it. But no, it is it was central in the conversation.
Top of mind for sure.
Yeah, nice. Good. Yeah, I need to redo my membership there, and then we can go to events. It's always more fun when the more people you know at those things, I don't expect you guys ever really just stand in the corner with a drink, but you seem pretty outgoing, but sometimes it's hard.
The box lunch.
The box lunch, yeah. Yeah. This is fun.
Oh, it's so nice to
chat. Really fun to talk to you.
I just love these things. It's when do you just sit down and hear somebody's life story for an hour and 40 minutes, or you guys when's the last time you told your life story? It's a lot of fun just to, especially with people like you who are so interested in engaging with people. It makes a lot of fun. So thanks.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thanks.
It's fun to do this. And great questions. And thank you.
Cool. Now next we just need to do a project together. Let's get something cool.
Let's do it. Or make one up if we can.
That's definitely.
All
right. Well, cool. Have a good weekend and think about, keep thinking about some kind of an event if you want to. So
I would say be 100% into that. Just let us know when or how or what.
We can definitely help make it happen.
Well, let's just think about it for a little bit, and then let's check in together in a few weeks and see if any ideas have come up. So
okay,
sounds good.
Sounds great.
Cool. See you guys.
All right,
Bye. Thanks again.